Just a reminder, there are no eating or drinking in the rooms except for the water bottles, so I don't know if you guys have heard that yet. I'm pleased to introduce Hannah Smalltree from Kazina. Hannah has been working in data and analytics for almost 2 decades. She spent almost 10 years as a tech journalist and editor at Tech Target. Hannah has worked for several big data software companies and is now part of the leadership team at Kazina. She will be presenting the title talk, Cloud, Hadoop, and Big Data Services 101. Please join me in welcoming Hannah.
Hello. Well, you heard it earlier, so now I feel like I have to go through with it and do it. I work in data during the day, but I do have a bit of a side job. I like to sing. This is something I did for our company meeting. I'll steal a little bit. Picture yourself in your old infrastructure that's heavy and rigid with costs that just rise. Somebody says cloud, you move there quite slowly, 'cause you're with a big enterprise. That's my cheap way to get claps at the beginning. But there is a full song about moving you've got a new cloud on the horizon, is how that whole song goes. So my name is Hannah. I worked as a tech journalist for a number of years, and then I've worked in marketing. Marketing and product management and talking with people for the last 5 years. I got to move to California as part of that process. But I really like to approach this as my job, which is tracking the market, trying to make sense of these terms that are going on. I started covering the market heavily in 2005, and a lot has changed since then, both in journalism and in tech. I was a beat reporter for master data management, if you can imagine it. One reporter focused on that big problem that's still not solved. Today we're going to talk about why companies are moving to the cloud, why more interest in Hadoop and big data in the cloud, a little bit more that I can tell you about navigating the categories, although I wish I had the magic answer for you. Some success stories from our company and a few things to consider. We'll cover that pretty quickly. I like to start with this eye chart, we say, in these presentations. This is from Matt Turk. It's a big data landscape chart. And the reason I put this up is to defend myself against not using names. Or if you say, hey, is that like who's what company? I'll say, I try to pay attention to our market, but there's a lot going on in it. So this is a great graphic. It's a free download. He has his own categorization. Infrastructure up here, analytics and applications. That's pretty straightforward. And then he has some other divisions here. We're right up here in the Hadoop and a cloud section, Kazina, the company that I work for. But the real goal is to try to understand some of these categories that are happening in the cloud, why they're happening in the cloud, and why that might impact you. So some of the reasons, and these are not necessarily in particular order. People have different challenges in each of these sectors. So shifting data gravity, and that's a term that Gardner uses that I like a lot. And it refers to the fact that more of our data is in the cloud. If you're using Salesforce, if you're using marketing applications, data might be generated in the cloud more than it's generated in your data center. And that is causing people to wonder, should we bring all of this data back to our data center, or should we be moving our analytics closer to where the data is? And typically in a big enterprise, there's going to be a balance of both. So it's kind of the hybrid architecture that we'll talk about. But shifting data gravity, it's usually the primary consideration for whether you want to do analytics in the cloud. Where's your data? How big is it? Where's all the rest of your data that you'll need to marry with it? So data gravity. Another reason is cost. And this one gets a lot of play because it can really go both ways. The cloud is not automatically cheaper. Pay-as-you-go things can get expensive really, really quickly. But the ability with Hadoop to separate the storage and processing layer means that you can utilize infrastructure more efficiently and theoretically get lower costs. But that really requires that you know something about how to provision these systems to disintermediate the storage and the processing layer and provision it all so that you do get the best price performance and you don't end up with what we call either the teenage daughter cell phone bill surprise, which is a little less surprising in the age of unlimited minutes, Or in my crowd, we talk about the open bar tab surprise. When you put your credit card down and go, just help yourself, I've got an open tab. And then at the end of the night, you're like, oh, my friends can drink. So your scientists can process in the same way that my friends can drink. So being mindful of cost, it is a big driver, but it can also be a big challenge. Another reason that there is more interest in the cloud for big data is agility and automation. So there are a lot of changes going on within the cloud ecosystem and within the open source ecosystem and within the analytics ecosystem. So you multiply all of those changes and there's a lot going on. So working in the cloud gives you some level of automation. So some things that take a lot of time on premises or with open source solutions can be more easily automated in the cloud. And it's typically easier to make changes. Not always, but it's often easier to make changes. So the ability to have automation, to have these extra tools, the ability to make changes quickly is important in this kind of ecosystem or ecosystems that are rapidly changing. And this is a great one. So expertise and economies of scale. It's difficult to provision, to manage costs, to figure out how to assemble all of the different services together. And so having one group of people in a central location that can manage all of it for you is a great idea. We've seen that happen with infrastructure as a service. That's what AWS does. They're really good with physical security, for example, and with managing our infrastructure layer. So now one group of people can manage this on behalf of many different companies. And that paradigm went to software as a service. Now it's coming to big data as a service. One of the reasons it did not happen with data yet, why it's just kind of starting to happen, is because of things like data quality, master data management. All of these source systems that were located on site and that needed all of those systems around it, and that still need those systems around it. So moving to the cloud it's a big deal for enterprises because there is data located in both places, there's systems and processes in both places. It's not as easy as just taking all of that and moving it into the cloud. That would be expensive. So expertise and economies of scale, again, it's a big driver, but it can also be a challenge as well. I'm also going to invite some questions throughout. If we get hung up on a topic, I'll move us along, but if you have a burning question, raise up your hand and we'll talk about it. So big data and cloud Hadoop use cases. That was a word cloud right there. Just say a bunch of keywords at once. Big data, Hadoop, and cloud use cases. The biggest one we're seeing at Kazina, because we are offering things like Hadoop that are very easy to use in the cloud, is the Analytics Data Science Sandbox, or Advanced Analytics, or Analytics, whatever you want to call it on any given day. Customer Insights, that'll work too. And this is a sandbox where people can share data, where they can share analytics in a single secure cloud environment. So there's a lot of interest in having these environments that are separate from the data warehouse and that the data scientists don't have to manage themselves. Complete data and analytics stack, typically supporting business units. This is often seen in things like customer insights, marketing analytics, organizations like that. Sharing and monetizing data, very popular use in the cloud. So there's a lot of companies that are interested in doing more, whether it's taking a product and providing more data along with it as it's an analytical component of a product or service you offer, or whether it's straight up selling data sets to people within your industry. Improving data access and agility, and we all know this kind of from personal use, right? Being able to share things on Dropbox with your friends, being able to share data with your contractors, with your partners, with your customers in a secure way in the cloud is very convenient. So many more companies interested in doing that. When Kazina started, we saw this as the biggest market, reducing data warehousing costs. Because if there's one thing you know about data warehouses, and maybe you don't know much about it all, they're expensive. They are really, really expensive. The Kazina team came from Netezza, so we knew that firsthand. Netezza was a big data warehouse. And so there are companies interested in starting to move workloads off of their data warehouse into the cloud. I would say right now, the newer top-line workloads, so things like data science and advanced analytics, are way more popular. Data warehousing projects still tend to be around offloading. So offloading for advanced analytics, so taking data sets that are often accessed and moving them to the cloud, or around disaster recovery, or storage or archiving. So kind of the high interactivity workloads and the less used workloads. But a lot of stuff is going to stay in the data warehouse. That's what we're hearing very strongly from companies. And then, of course, collecting and staging IoT data. I think IoT is our drinking game of Big Data Day LA. Every time somebody says IoT, take a drink. And definitely take an Uber home. So those are some of the reasons, the ways that people are using the cloud today. This is Hadoop. That's Hadoop taking a run, because he's in LA, but it's really hot. This stat really floored me. So this is a Gardner stat, so take it with a Gardner grain of salt. Of the people who have acquired Hadoop, only 17% of those are in production. So that means that, math, 83% of those are not in production. So they have been unable to get off the ground. Well, wait a minute, I thought it was open source software. Just download, run it, and install it, and off to the races. Well, I think the key is this term production, in production. And people will define that in different ways. A lot of it has to do with security of data moving to and from the cloud, things like integration with your existing systems, things like enterprise management, your IT group having visibility into the platform. All of those go into this idea of in production. So the question is, can cloud help? And the answer is, it depends. That's always the answer in IT. There's pros and cons. And definitely we talk to a lot of companies who are not ready to move to the cloud, and they give us very good reasons why. So if you've spent a lot of time and money on your existing architecture, if you feel very good about that, you might want to stay on-prem. If all of your data sources are on-premise, like a manufacturing organization, or other people that have a lot of data on premises, it might make more sense to leave all of your data there. Existing processes, security perceptions, and this is a big one. Some people think of their data center as more secure than Amazon. Some people don't. I tend to think of our data centers as like the safe I have in my garage, and Amazon's like the big bank safe. But it's different, and some people have built up great security practices and they want to keep them on site. Access, this can be a double-edged sword. It might be easier for people to access data internally if you keep everything on premise. It might be harder for people who are not there to access it, but again, it might be important to you for on-premises access, to focus on that. Cost and status quo. If you have something that you know how to use, that everybody knows how to use, sometimes there's a big hesitancy around changing it. And those all can be great reasons to stay on premises. In the cloud, however, you have that flexibility, elasticity with volume and compute. You can access your different data sources often more efficiently and often more cheaply than dragging it all back to your data center. You have the ability to take advantage of new tools for automation. You have security that's handled by arguably some of the best security experts in the world. Amazon has a data center with a moat. You have a moat around your data center? What would you put in your moat? Gators? I don't know. Hackers. And then sharing resources and sharing data can be much easier in the cloud. Cost, again, we talked about, it can be a double-edged sword. It can be cheaper in the cloud. It can be cheaper on premises. Sometimes the benefits or the payoff you get really will push this decision in a different way. New capabilities is another big one. So a lot of our data science groups are interested in using R in a more collaborative environment. R and Python on Spark. That's a thing these days. A lot of people are interested in doing that, but it's not as easy as it might sound. So between these spaces lies a place called hybrid. And hybrid, you want to watch how people are defining the term, because many people have different ways of defining it. So with a hybrid architecture, you have some of the stuff on premises and some in the cloud. And then you can decide sort of which pieces of your architecture you want to handle where. One of the issues with big data services today is that, one of the good things and bad things, is that they will cover all of these categories. So like, for example, Kazina has a piece of our solution in every single one of these categories. You'll find other people who are tucking in right in here in the platform as a service layer. They're assuming you already have some kind of infrastructure as a service. You'll have software as a service applications that need you to have a platform before they can actually run in the cloud. So that's one of the challenges in navigating this market. I'm trying to think, 5 years ago, I think there was maybe one company using big data as a service, maybe one using Hadoop as a service. Maybe any of the vendors in the room can correct me. But there are a lot of as-a-service categories out there. At a basic level, when we say as a service, we're often referring to some level of automation and repeatability with software. That tends to be the key difference between a managed service provider, this gets really gray with people though. So managed services tends to be when you hire consultants, they come in, they build it all for you. With an as a service, it's more about having a single software application that we provide to many different companies. That gives us the economies of scale and the automation to offer it at a lower price. So typically, as a service offerings will be cheaper than their counterpart managed service offerings. They might not be as customized as having an army of consultants come in and build you your own ecosystem. And you'll hear these terms used interchangeably, which makes it really difficult. So, like with everything in software, the answer is figure out exactly what you're getting, because the same label on something might mean a very different product. Some of the big ones these days are big data as a service, although we increasingly are hearing backlash against the term big data, because it does not fit the problem, because most people's problems tend to be more about data variety, not data volume. Some people have data volume problems, but a lot of it is around variety. Hadoop as a service, quickly being usurped by Spark as a service in memory processing, very hot, very fast. Data lake as a service. So this is about a Hadoop storage repository. It tends to be more optimized for storage than for processing. Data warehouse as a service. This is Amazon Redshift. Some other, Azure has one now as well. Database platform as a service. This is a Gardner term, kind of similar to big data as a service. And then you have all these other ones. So Gardner just came out with this Hadoop operation services. This is the Forrester one. Big data warehouse, cloud application services, cloud services. So there's a lot of different terms out there. As a marketer, it's really hard for me to figure out what label to put on our product, because there's like all these different labels out there. So that's where I say, look at the capabilities. Usually in these as a service, big data and Hadoop as a service, you will find data processing, analytic processing of some sort. You will find automated provisioning. So getting up and running is increasingly table stakes. You will find some kind of subscription pricing. The pricing models can be very, very different. And you will find some level of maintenance, some kind of centralized expertise that will help you in some way. These are the big depends. We'll rethink that phrasing. So some of the depends are storage, whether storage is included, and also around the processing, whether it is processing that, whether it's an ongoing platform that's always up, where you can store data and come back to it and do analytics, or whether it's a one-time job. People will call those transient workloads, ephemeral workloads. Sounds kind of like a ghost, but that means I have one giant workload. I need to run it now. I'm going to spin up a cluster, and then I'm going to spin it down. That's typically referred to as transient. For example, my company does persistent, so we have an always-on environment because we're going for slightly different use cases. The cloud infrastructure can be very different, depending on what you prefer and who you're using. The analytics and query interface can be very different. When you see things labeled, actually one I should put up there is a data science platform. Some data science platforms will include everything in it. Some of them are just focused on that top level, like model layer development. Some big data as a service will include an analytics interface, some of them don't, so make sure you know what you're getting there. Data loading, this is a huge one for enterprises. So whether there's encryption, how easy it is to get the data into whatever you're loading into, a Redshift data warehouse or a Cloudera big data platform or whatever you're looking for. Connectors and integrations to your data sources, not just to some data sources. You really want to dig into this one actually, because this can really change your implementation time if the company you're working with does not have any kind of pre-built connectors to your data source. That'll slow things down. And then so security and encryption, and that's a obviously really big one, in compliance. The biggest underestimated challenges we hear about, the first one is this one, production grade, and you need to figure out what that means for your company. It's not something you want to be surprised with at the final hour by your CSIO, usually your Chief Security Officer. So make sure you understand what's required to put your Hadoop cluster into production in your company and that you can make it production grade. Deployment time, so especially with Hadoop projects, things can seem a lot easier on a Gantt chart when you're reading about them online than when you're actually faced with doing it. Skills, so provisioning for price performance. A lot of people can make Hadoop work. a handful of people can make Hadoop sing and really be customized for the specific workload that you are handling. So making sure that you have those internal skills, or that whatever provider you're working with can offer those skills to you. Security, encryption, and compliance. We know a lot about this one, especially when you're working in the cloud. You do not want to get caught out or called out by your chief security officer over missing some element of this part of it. Encryption, so I said encryption, integration and data loading. So how you're going to get data into the cloud, do you need to bring that component? Does the cloud provider include it? What about encryption? Is it end-to-end secure? What happens in all of those handoff points? Ongoing management requirements. This one can be really big. So getting Hadoop up and running, so maybe that's a project to get it done. But then there's changes. There's changes in the ecosystem, there's patching, there's backups, there's platform upgrades. There's all of these operations processes. Don't underestimate how long those will take. Talk to other people who have done it and really understand sort of what skills you're likely to need there. And this is my dollar signs, delivering results and business impact. That's really all of our jobs. That's my job in marketing, that's engineering's job, making our companies more successful. If we're spending a lot of time messing around with Hadoop and trying to figure out all these data loading things, we might not be spending as much time figuring out how to use that data, how to enable our business partners, how to make money. This is Hadoop again. Hadoop's trying to figure out, this is our friend Hadoopy, he's trying to figure out how to fit all of that into a tiny house. He's not probably going to do very well, that's why I don't like tiny houses. But like in the HDFS, it's making 4 copies of the data. So you need some fairly significant storage infrastructure. That can be difficult in a small environment. I'm going to go through here pretty quickly. All of these slides will be online. I don't think there's any big surprises here. A lot of this is basic requirements and capability gathering. Some of the biggest underestimated ones I mentioned before, which are that ongoing operations, your skills, the provisioning part of it, security, agility for future changes. You can hang on to that. So Carlson Wagonlit, I always thought it was Carlson Wagonlit until it became a customer, and then it's Wagonlit. So Carlson Wagonlit Travel they were working on a Cloudera cluster. They were hiring a data science team. They got the data science team. Their Cloudera cluster was not ready, not even a little bit ready. Like pieces on the floor, like lost the instructions, lost the box top, not even a little bit ready. So the data science VP came to us and said, can you help us? And we had been talking with them for a while, telling them that we could help them, and finally they were ready. When they were ready, we got them stood up in 2 hours. So automated provisioning, that part is becoming increasingly table stakes. A lot of companies, if they can't get you up relatively quickly in the cloud, you should ask some more questions. We got them up and running really quickly, and now they use this as their primary data science platform. What was really big for them, they found that their data scientists were emailing data sets to each other. That is no good for a variety of reasons. They found that a lot of their tools had inconsistent versions. So by having all of their tools in the Casina cloud environment, they could share more efficiently. They didn't have version problems when they tried to share code between each other. They really liked it because it was fast. And if they have any issues with performance, they pick up the phone and they call Casina. One of the big benefits of our company is that we are giving everything to you from one company. You'll find that with some other ones as well. But thinking about the number of vendors that you need to interface with in each of these projects is another big consideration. I deal with a lot of vendors every day, and I know that dealing with one vendor is better than dealing with 3, especially if you're having a hard time figuring out sort of where a problem happens. Yes?
Tell us a little bit more about where that data originates. Is it pulled in from the feeds?
Yeah.
Is it,
no, that's a fantastic question. They have a combination. So Carlson Wagonlit is really working on revolutionizing the travel industry. So some of the data comes from their data warehouse, and they have a direct connector, and they pull data from the data warehouse. I think actually they have a nightly pull so that they don't interfere with it. One of the questions they were trying to answer is why, when in big corporate travel, I should mention that, when business travelers book a flight, 50% of the time they don't book a hotel. And actually, I'm exactly like that. But they were trying to figure out why people do that, what are the circumstances that do cause them to book a hotel, and how could they sort of change that and have us book hotels more often. So that was a very specific one that was based on data that they had. They also do a lot with purchase data and data from partners and customers. So you could imagine as a travel agency, there is a lot of data in this industry. I don't know exactly what I can talk about, but you could picture things like airlines and hotels, partners who wanted to share their data to also solve these problems. For example, a hotel might be very interested in solving that problem with you. For data scientists, that issue of being able to get data from a data warehouse or from external sources, open data sets, purchase data sets, that's also been a really big driver, actually. Some companies really like to have data in the cloud because it's outside the firewall, because then they aren't bringing it into their environment. So if it is a purchase data set and there's any weirdness, it's not inside the firewall. That's a technical term, weirdness. Yes?
Data warehouse on-premise or in the cloud?
Their data analysts are all on premises. They're in different locations. They actually have 50 different data scientists accessing this now. Some of them are in the Midwest, some of them are in Europe, but they're all able to share data sets.
The source is on-premise?
Oh, the data sources are a combination. So the data warehouse is on premises, and then they do a fair amount of purchase data that they get from other sources. But the data warehouse is on premises. Yeah. They're not moving all of the data warehousing data into their environment. So that's what the difference is. They're filtering for certain pieces of data warehouse information. We have a data warehouse product, we embed Redshift. We call it a data mart because we don't want to interfere oftentimes with the big data warehouse environment that's on premise. It takes a lot to lift and shift one of those big environments to the cloud. Has anyone ever heard of Sweetgreen? They're really good. Yeah, they make awesome salads for lunch. They have the benefit of being founded in 2007, which means they don't have anything on premises. They're a very tech-savvy company. They went straight to Kazina for their data warehouse. So we are their data platform team. They don't have a data team. They have analysts, they have data scientists. Managing Kazina is a part-time job for one of their directors, but she basically doesn't spend any time worrying about the data warehouse. One of their big reasons was security. She said, I don't want to have to pay attention to all those patches and know what's important and know what's not. I want Kazina to take care of all of that. Done. So we are a foundation for all of their retail analytics. They have ERP, this is POS, point of sale systems, loyalty systems, payroll systems, and they're putting that all together into Kazina. That data, some of it's coming from POS transaction systems, so that's actually in a store, but all of their data is stored in the cloud and managed by Kazina. And then there's plenty of great examples across other vendors, I know. We're not the only vendor in this space. And like I said, I think the big thing is really to know which pieces of the puzzle that you need to solve. What do you have built out really well? What are your core competencies? You don't need to recreate that. You don't need to go to a vendor for that if you have it done really well. But if there are pieces that you could tuck in, that you could automate to make your life easier, then why wouldn't you do that? So a few other resources here. This first webinar, actually, I will mention for people in this room, it has a transcript on it. So if you, like me, do not like hour-long webinars, you can go to this webinar page, download a transcript, and read it. So that has the Carlson Wagonlit, I did it again. Carlson Wagonlit perspective and a demo of Kazina. This is a Gardner market guide for Hadoop distributions, totally free, Gardner research on our website. And then we have another blog series that our product manager wrote with these little cute Hadoop cartoons about putting Hadoop and Spark into production. Kazina is big data as a service. We're fully managed. We do a lot of this stuff. We have a booth over there. We have cool little orange Sharpies. I was thinking I would have it in my hand to show to you. But that is my basic overview of what's going on with Hadoop in the cloud, and I'm happy to take 2 minutes of questions. Yes?
So if you're in the cloud, you don't need DR in your design overall?
Well, that's a great question. Of course, I would DR. I mean, companies have different ideas about what disaster recovery means. So in the cloud, some people are doing 2 copies in the cloud. Kazina, actually, because we're on AWS and Azure, we could theoretically DR to the other clouds, which I've heard a lot of CIOs get quite excited about. Not many people actually doing that. And then there are some people, there's one company we're working with that's doing DR for an on-premises system in the cloud. But you're right. I mean, you either need to do 2 copies. If you're going to do DR, you need to do 2 copies somewhere. Yeah.
Because my expectation is if I have everything in the cloud, you are replicating it.
We are doing backups and restores. But it's a little bit different than in like a big data warehousing environment where it's got everything built for the immediate cutover. I guess it depends on how you define the limits of your DR versus backup recovery. But happy to talk about that more. Well, somebody else in my team is happy to talk about that more. Security I don't bluff on. Only trivia, rock trivia. Any other questions?
Sweet Greens, is that Northern California?
No, they're all over the U.S. They started in Washington. I think there's one in L.A. actually. They have really good salad restaurant food.
It's on Sunset and Selma.
Sunset and Soma?
Selma.
Soma, all right. Selma? Soma?
In Hollywood.
Okay. So go check out Sweet Green. And thanks for coming. I'm Hannah from Cuisina. Have a good rest of your day.